A single intercontinental ballistic missile, also known as an ICBM, is being launched toward the United States to carry out a nuclear attack. Of course, if this was a full-blown nuclear war, hundreds of ICBMs and submarine-launched ballistic missiles would be launched, in which case, it's exactly what you think. Kaput. Game over. You simply cannot stop a raid of hundreds of ICBMs, each carrying tens of nuclear warheads. But what it takes to even intercept a single ICBM is not what you think. It can take up to 30 seconds to detect the launch of an ICBM, depending on the weather. If it's cloudy, as soon as the rocket rises above the clouds, the missile's exhaust will be detected by infrared sensors, either on the older Defense Support Program satellites or newer space-based infrared systems. Once an ICBM is detected by multiple satellites, an accurate trajectory of the booster can be calculated, but not necessarily its target. And thus, a decision has to be made by command and control. Is the missile hostile, or could it be just an exercise? The reality is that a simple test launch could be viewed as provocative and start a nuclear war. For this reason, the United States has recently canceled a Minuteman III ICBM test because of increased tension with Russia due to their invasion of Ukraine. But once a decision is made to fire an interceptor, there will be multiple opportunities to shoot down the ICBM, since ballistic missiles go through 3 phases of flight: boost phase, midcourse phase, and terminal phase. Arguably, the easiest time to shoot down an ICBM is during its boost phase, but it's also ironically the least practical one. Intercepting an ICBM during the boost phase while the rocket engine is still burning is a huge advantage, because instead of intercepting a small nuclear warhead, it's much easier to hit a relatively slow hot booster that is of monstrous size. But it's the race against time that makes it impractical. A typical ICBM burns for about 250 seconds. As mentioned earlier, it can take up to 30 seconds just to detect an ICBM by satellites, and it can take up to 60 to 70 seconds to launch an interceptor missile, and that's without taking into account a decision time. This brings the total reaction time to 100 seconds after the ignition of the ICBM, leaving only 150 seconds to intercept the missile. Depending on the model, an interceptor has a burn time of about 100 seconds. Satellite and other ground-based sensors can guide the missile toward the ICBM before it can lock into the heat signature and strike the ICBM structure and not sail harmlessly through the tenuous flame. This would be known as hit-to-kill. While older and less advanced systems would get close to the target and use proximity fuse to detonate an explosive warhead, the hit-to-kill interceptors rely on kinetic energy, that is, the interceptor's mass and speed, to directly hit the target head-on and destroy it. What follows a successful strike is a shoot, look, shoot tactic, which confirms whether the missile has been destroyed before launching another interceptor. This can minimize the number of interceptors required to defeat incoming missiles. As you will find out soon, this is very important. On paper, it's relatively easy to destroy a nuclear missile during its boost phase. In practice, however, you have severe reach versus time challenges for intercepting during boost phase. The first challenge is that the command and control has little time to decide whether to fire an interceptor. If making the decision takes more than a minute, if not less, the interceptor will not reach the ICBM before its boost phase ends. To overcome this time challenge, it was proposed to use a weapon that travels at the speed of light, a powerful laser. The goal of the YAL-1 airborne laser system was to shoot down enemy ICBMs during their boost phase from a distance of 115 to 200 miles depending on the type of missile. However, the laser turned out not to be effective since the atmosphere diffused the laser's energy more than it was originally anticipated. The effective range of the laser turned out to be measured in tens of kilometers, which meant that the Boeing 747 on which the laser was mounted would have to be flying within enemy airspace. No ship Sherlock. The program was cancelled. The second challenge is range. The interceptors would have to be launched from a relatively close location to the ICBM's launch site, which would make it vulnerable to attack itself. Some say that the lower bound is 30 miles and the upper bound is 620 miles downrange. Regardless, this is a big issue. It may work in case of intercepting a rocket launched from North Korea, but not if launched from the middle of Russia or China. While the American SM-3 missile, which can be launched from either Navy ships or Aegis ashore, has the capability to intercept ICBMs during boost phase, it is not viewed as a viable option due to the range time problem. The American missile defense system currently does not have any practical capability to destroy ICBMs during the boost phase. There is, however, research being conducted on new technologies with a focus on unmanned aerial vehicles. The boost phase may be out for now, but destroying a nuclear missile during its mid-course phase provides the largest time interval to do so, which is about 20 minutes. Seems like a lot of time, but accomplishing this task might be more difficult than hitting a bullet with another bullet. A ballistic missile travels at a speed of about 15,000 miles per hour. That's 9 times faster than the speed of an average bullet. There are 2 ways that Americans can intercept nuclear warheads during the mid-course phase: using a ground-based interceptor or using a Standard Missile 3 Block 2 Alpha that can be launched from Aegis cruisers and destroyers. The ground-based interceptor is part of a $40 billion ground-based midcourse defense program, which is one of the layers of the American Ballistic Missile Defense System, intended to protect the United States from intermediate and long-range ballistic missiles. A ground-based interceptor is a multi-stage solid fuel booster with an exoatmospheric kill vehicle, or EKV. Exoatmospheric means outside of the atmosphere. Thus, the EKV is like a little spacecraft which relies on thrusters to maneuver, since the fins cannot help with steering outside of the atmosphere. This is in contrast to endoatmospheric, meaning within atmosphere, where the vehicle is maneuverable through aerodynamic forces. A booster carries the EKV toward the target's predicted location in space, and when it's released, it uses guidance data transmitted from ground support and fire control system components, as well as onboard sensors to close in and destroy the target. Each ground-based interceptor requires its own silo, and all 44 interceptors owned by the United States are currently located at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California and Fort Greely in Alaska. Each interceptor costs a whopping $75 million. Aside from the ground-based interceptors, another way to destroy a ballistic missile is to utilize the Aegis Ballistic Missile Defense, specifically the SM-3 Block 2 Alpha that can rely on satellite and other sensors to track and intercept an intermediate-range ICBM. This is known as Engage on Remote. The SM-3 is a multi-stage interceptor that can be launched from VLS Mark 41 from cruisers and destroyers, as well as Aegis Ashore. The interceptor delivers a kill vehicle to space where it maneuvers to intercept an incoming warhead. The biggest challenge for SM-3 interceptors is range. The launch ship has to be suitably located to intercept an ICBM. This is why SM-3s are only good at intercepting intermediate-range ICBMs, while ground-based interceptors can do both intermediate range and intercontinental. So far, things seem more or less under control. That's until we introduce the next complication: decoys. During its mid-course phase, a typical Russian ICBM, like the R-36 Satan, can release what seems to be 50 nuclear warheads. But in reality, only 10 of those are actual warheads known as Multiple Independently Targetable Reentry Vehicles, or MIRV. The other 40 are decoys. All of a sudden, one ICBM has turned into 50 different moving targets, 10 of which need to be intercepted. The defense systems need to have a way to discriminate between decoys and lethal targets.